Chris Walker is one of the biggest looming threats that you'll encounter at the Mount Massive Asylum in the game Outlast. Nicknamed Strongfat while working at a subsidiary of the Murkoff Corporation, Chris Walker wasn't always the big hulking deformed brute that we come to know during the game. In fact, before his detainment at the Mount Massive Asylum, following a string of murders that he committed, he could pass for just a regular guy. However, by the time we run into him during the events of the game, it's fair to question just how much humanity he has left in that noseless face of his.
Little pig.
The story of Chris Walker as we know it begins in a tie-in comic series for the game entitled The Murkoff Account. This comic recounts the strange journey of two Murkoff employees named Paul Marion and Pauline Glick, who are employed by the corporation to mitigate insurance costs that they may incur. Essentially, Marion and Glick are the cleanup crew. They work hard to ensure that things that happen in the corporation stay within the corporation, whether that be attempting to track down a whistleblower or giving hush money to the widow of someone who died on Murkoff's watch. Glick and Marion first meet Chris Walker as they try to get to the bottom of a string of murders tied to a subsidiary of the Murkoff Corporation known as the Spindletop Psychotherapy Clinic. 3 veterans with PTSD who were undergoing psychiatric treatment at Spindletop had died in a very gruesome manner, torn to pieces by an unknown killer. Glick and Marion had been sent in to get to the bottom of these murders, but the doctor whom the patients had met with wasn't very cooperative. So they were forced to go to security instead, meeting none other than Chris Walker himself, a former military policeman who had done a few tours in Afghanistan before becoming a Spindletop security guard. The two mitigators spoke briefly with Chris, who told them that every session with the victims had been taped, and he offered to give those tapes to them, as well as the tape of a potential suspect named Omar, who had gotten violent during a session with a doctor. Further investigation into the incident revealed that the treatment that the patients were getting, referred to as dream therapy, may have been having some negative impacts on their mental state. This revelation drew Glick and Marion back to Spindletop, but when they returned, they found that another murder had been committed, this time on the doctor. Rushing to the security room to check the tapes, they found the equipment completely destroyed, pointing them to none other than Chris Walker. Following this lead to Walker's house, the mitigators found 4 coolers, 3 of which contained the heads of the known victims, with the 4th being presumably for the newly decapitated doctor. Searching around Walker's house, they found a small stuffed pig that Walker had kept from childhood, and when Walker returned home with the head of the doctor, he was not happy to see Marion holding his beloved stuffed animal. Walker attacked Glick and Marion, taking some serious damage in the process, and though he was eventually defeated by the duo, he held his own even after a gunshot from Glick put a hole through his jaw. However, Walker couldn't be taken to the authorities. He was an employee of the Murkoff Corporation after all, even if it was just one of their subsidiaries. Instead, he had to be dealt with in a different way. The Spindletop murders had been solved, but since Walker couldn't be given to the police, Glick and Marion had to find another suspect to throw the police off Walker's scent. Placing the decapitated heads in the initial possible suspect Omar's house, they framed him for the murders and sent the real killer, Chris Walker, to the Mount Massive Asylum to be made use of in other ways. While at Mount Massive, like most patients, Walker was subject to testing with the morphogenic engine in order to see if he was capable of becoming the Wall Rider. However, he was unable to proceed further with the therapy when it was deemed unsafe to progress beyond a stage 3 hormone schedule. It was determined by the researchers that Walker was incompatible with their needs due to mental traumas he sustained while serving in Afghanistan. Thanks to these therapies, though, an extreme fixation of manic exaggeration of military security protocol came to the forefront of Walker's mind. These therapies also seemingly had a huge impact on Walker's mental state beyond this fixation as well. While in the asylum, Walker began performing serious self-mutilation, ripping the flesh off of his forehead in order to grant him, in his own words, a truer way of seeing, and ripping at the skin around his nose and mouth because of his own anxieties. Walker continued with his incarceration at the asylum for roughly 2 years, until a leak from an employee at Mount Massive would send the entire place into total chaos. Most of the inmates escaped their confinements, and Walker was no exception. Now freed to roam the asylum as he pleased, Walker went on an absolute rampage, seemingly killing anyone and everyone that he could get his hands on, in perhaps some attempt to get the asylum back to a state of normalcy thanks to his fixation on military security protocol. During Miles Upsher's horrifying adventure in Mount Massive, he will have several run-ins with this ridiculously strong brute. Not only that, but Walker's handiwork can be seen all throughout the asylum. Headless bodies can be found all around, and since we know that Walker has a certain affinity for this manner of murder, they can likely be attributed to him. His biggest collection of decapitated heads can be found just as you enter the asylum in the administration block's library, introducing us to just how bad things have gotten here. Chris Walker is a truly remarkable maniac. His strength is absolutely absurd, and his tracking skills are nothing to scoff at either. And although he may eventually learn a difficult lesson that no matter how tough you may be, there's always someone tougher, he will go down as one of the most prolific killers to have ever set foot in the Mount Massive Asylum, and one of the ones that you'd least like to bump into.